Hello everyone. This is the second part of my analysis of the 22nd episode of Skibidi Toilet's Multiverse from Dom Studio. So in case you haven't seen the first part, I highly recommend you to watch it first. But in this video, I'll answer all the questions that remained untouched from the first part of my analysis. How did this mysterious Drillman end up near the button? And when will we see him again? What is Alpha's favorite Titan? And also, whose side is Clockwoman fighting on? Get your tea and snacks ready and prepare to watch this video to the end because this is going to be very interesting. Let's go! We ended up with the fact that the huge and scary vacuum cleaner Skibidi turned out to be booby-trapped and, after his defeat, started the detonation timer, which is something like we could already see in episode 64 of the original series when the toilet with explosives burst out after being flushed. The Titan was thrown out of the Skibidi base straight down, and in slow motion you can see how the Titan covers the cameraman sitting on his shoulder with one hand instead of trying to protect himself from falling with both hands. This is what saves the poor guy in the welding mask from the fate of being flattened. And now, I also would like to remind you to subscribe to my channel, because we almost achieved a number of 100,000 subscribers, so let's push it a little more. We can make it. So, let's get back to the other agents who also happened to be near the explosions. Interestingly enough, all of them were not near the vacuum Skibidi, and the other toilets were also rigged with detonators that went off after they were flushed. I think all of these agents perished except for two, namely Drillman the bouncer, who probably survived the event thanks to his massive armor. And the black speaker man also survived that explosion. He was saved by Clockwoman, and she is so strong. And you know, I like this character because of her stylish hat, and not what you think about. I also want to draw your attention to these things that are on the sides of her head. It's exactly the same thing that was on Skibidi's headphones in the beginning, which supports the theory that these headphones can also function as a clock. And it also suggests that things may not be so simple with Clockwoman, and she's behaving just like me, elite clockmen and Moby who don't fight on the side of the Alliance but don't let them win completely, pursuing some of her own goals by supplying Skibidi with new technology. Okay, there's only 1 minute left on the timer before the nuclear missile departs. So all the agents' attention is directed to the room with the red button, where the strange Skibidi have appeared. Look at them. These empty mouths and eye sockets, as if they weren't their faces, and if they were just rubber masks with nothing underneath. This Skibidi is equipped with only one explosive and a jet booster, which suggests that it is a kamikaze toilet that has learned the magic of levitation, so he just floats in the air. Not that far from him rides another Skibidi who couldn't even get his helmet on properly, and instead of just shooting the Drillman with his many missiles, he just decides to run him over and then trip over him and explode. I think this confirms my idea that Skibidi are some real damn dumbasses. And finally, here's the third Skibidi toilet, which came right out of the room with the big red button. He is the most dangerous one out of those three. He has 4 robotic arms, the upper 2 of which are holding huge knives, and the lower pair is being equipped with circular saws. He also has a jetpack, and all this allows him to be an extremely fearsome opponent. It's just a pity that we won't see him in action, at least in this episode. We also see the bouncer guy who survived, and in fact, he is being just fine. Well, aside from his destroyed drill on his head, sparks all over his body, and his left arm being practically torn off. Otherwise, he's fine. Clockwoman notices that one of the cameramen was attacked by glued toilets with the huge TV in the middle. But it looks like they don't have a remote control for him. So they go with the TV being turned off. Each of these Skibidi has one part of a jetpack and one mini cannon. I wonder what would happen if each of them wanted to fly in different directions, though. Anyway, Clockwoman pulls out a gun, and the camera goes down. I gotta say, Dom Studio knows how to get the right angles. She fires her gun right into the Skibidi, and you just look at them. Our boy was simply hammered. She saves the poor cameraman, but I honestly don't know what these guys are doing when they're choosing who to save, because a second earlier, they were just watching the Skibidi destroying these poor guys. Clockwoman starts doing her magic, and when she gets too close to the cameraman, his shirt suddenly turns green. If they were that close to me, I'd turn green too. So, she puts a blob of energy right into the cameraman, and we're shown how his heart starts to speed up. And this heart is acting pretty much like a real heart, but with some mechanical upgrades, which once again proves the theory that the agents are cyborgs after all, and not robots. After this procedure being done, the cameraman gets up and starts running towards the button with great speed, bypassing all the Skibidi and explosions on his way. This is how I imagine those who leave the first comments on my videos. This scene reminds me of the Flash series. Don't you think so too, guys? The agent almost reaches the button, but it says personnel only, so he's getting thrown off by a force field as soon as he gets near it. And when the timer finishes counting down, the missile begins its launching process, and not even Titan can stop it, despite all attempts to shove it back in. But then someone comes to the rescue whom no one really expected to see. And it is no other than Drillman, who we saw in episode 10 with his very strange device. To tell you honestly, guys, I do not know how he was able to break through the concrete floor with his drill, which does not even have a drill bit. But the fact is that for 12 episodes back to back, he had been stubbornly digging a tunnel in order to eventually press this button. And it would be especially funny if several more nuclear warheads were launched with the usage of this button. Then the agents of the Alliance would think that it is not worth pressing the first buttons that come to hand without reading the instructions for use. But this time we got pretty lucky, and the rocket really stops its activation process. I would also like to draw your attention to the wristwatch on this Drillman's hand, and more precisely to the position of the hour hands. They are pretty much different from the position of the hour hands on the clockwoman's clocks. Although in the first episode, when the main clockman gave the POV wristwatch, it seemed kind of obvious that the hour hands on them and on the clockmen generally coincide, which is not the case with this lady though. The camera flies right into the cameraman as if it was sending us into his flashbacks from episode 10, which may suggest that this cameraman and the POV from episode 10 are actually the same character in the end. When the flashback ends, we see that Drillman has started drilling the floor again. Well, we'll probably see him again in another 12 episodes when we have to push another big red button. Finally, the Skibidi who was present in this very room wakes up and decides to disembowel the POV with his circular saw. But once again, he's getting saved by Clockwoman. And damn it, I literally swear to you guys, this buddy is the luckiest dude in the whole world. This is where the Skibidi Base 2 storyline ends, and we are getting transported to the Alpha's lair afterwards. It's the same place that we saw earlier, based on those barrels that have the inscriptions Umbrella on their surfaces. Alpha is standing right there looking at the picture of Titan Drillman on her tablet, and it seems that just like me, she begins to like this particular Titan because, as I personally think, he's the coolest of them all. Given that she calls him her favorite toy though, I'm guessing that she plans to take control of him quite soon, just as the Skibidi toilets were previously able to take over the mind of Titan Cameraman. But there is one thing I have no idea about: how she's actually going to do that, considering that Titan Drillman himself is just a capsule that either houses the pilot or contains the Titan's consciousness, and that capsule can be attached to other bodies, and there may be several of them. She is being approached by a Skibidi mutant who is wearing a gray suit, whereas the other mutants that we saw earlier had been wearing black suits in TED. He walks over and says something, and his speech sounds like the zombie sound effects from the game called Half-Life, which is probably a direct reference. And unlike me, she realizes that she's talking about the Skibidi losing the battle again, as is usually the case. And on top of that, she's also saying some very interesting information. She has sent a message to all the agents' tablets saying that Skibidi Base 2 has been found, and they need to attack it immediately. And she did it in order to take control of the agents' devices, but I'm not quite sure what devices she's talking about yet. Maybe she's referring to the watches that many of the agents are equipped with, and now she can control them by disabling their abilities? I find it to be quite possible, but then another question arises: how did she actually do it? I assume that this is indeed the red button which is to blame. I have repeatedly said that pressing various obscure buttons will not do any good, and it most likely happened so, that after immediately pressing it, all the devices had been captured. But it happened not just due to the fact of pressing, but because the one who pressed the button was wearing a watch, and only due to this, such situation occurred. And you are still sure, though, that after such a thing you can call this person the smartest character in the universe. Maybe by the smartest character, Dom Studio actually meant the Alpha who was able to pull off this move without anyone realizing its nature? But in any case, this is just my speculation, and we will find out whether I am right or wrong later in the series. And that was all for today. Be sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on a lot of interesting stuff I have. And that was me, Isa Toilet. See ya!